She came in at 8:47. Not that I was watching the clock. Just that I'd lit the candles at 7:30, and the wax had nearly caved in on itself. The pasta was cold. The wine had sweated itself warm. The photo, I'd gone and dug out that one from Cinque Terre, our second anniversary trip, where we still looked like we believed in each other, was face down by the time she finally noticed the table. She walked in, keys dropped, heels off, phone still in hand, scrolling. Didn't say a word about the food. Didn't ask about the effort. Just looked up long enough to raise one eyebrow at the setup and muttered, "Oh right, today." Then she poured herself a glass of wine, mine actually, and took one sip before looking me straight in the face. She didn't sit. She didn't soften. "He'll show you what 18 years couldn't." That was it. That was her toast. No smile, no smirk. Just flat, deliberate annihilation. I didn't ask who he was. Didn't need to. I saw it in the way she stood. Like the marriage was already a corpse and I was just some idiot kneeling by it, waiting for a miracle. My fork was still in my hand. I hadn't even taken the first bite. The candles crackled a bit, one of them guttering. "If he steps into this house," I said slowly, placing the fork down like it might shatter, "you'll both regret it." She laughed. Not from the gut. From somewhere higher up. False. Plastic. "Still with the drama, huh? That's why I'm done with you. You're just background now." Then she said she was going to the gym. She changed upstairs. Not into leggings. Not into anything sweat-wicking. A short black dress. One she hadn't worn in years. Too tight, she used to say. But it fit now. Perfectly. I could hear the zipper. Could hear her spritzing perfume. The same one she used to save for our anniversaries. I watched her check her phone. Once. Then again. And a third time by the door. She didn't look at me as she left. I watched her reflection, though, in the glass of the framed Cinque Terre photo she left behind. She didn't just walk out. She floated, confident, like she'd already won. I sat in that chair for 5 more minutes. Not because I was paralyzed or heartbroken or overwhelmed, but because I was still working out whether I'd follow the plan I'd sketched in the back of my mind over the last year, or the one I'd prepared for 3 years earlier. Because here's what I haven't said yet. This wasn't the first time I saw something coming. You don't live with someone for nearly 2 decades and miss the rot. It starts slow. A glance too long at someone's phone. A change in the laundry habits, certain items going out but never coming back. Less sleep, more showers. She stopped nagging about the little things. That's when I knew something big was replacing them. There's a point when a man stops reacting. Not because he doesn't care, but because caring would only get in the way of what's coming next. And before we get deeper into what happened that night, let me just say something that actually matters. Over 97% of you are listening to this without subscribing. You don't have to, but when you do, it helps the team tell more stories like this, and believe me, what you're about to hear deserves to be finished. Back to the night. I didn't clean up. I didn't eat. I poured myself a fresh glass of her wine, sat down, opened the notebook I kept in the drawer she never looked in, and I began to move pieces. See, when you live with someone who's gradually turning into a stranger, you either beg for scraps or prepare your exit. I didn't beg. I documented, cataloged, I archived. Every time she slipped up, every careless smirk, every late night with no gym bag in sight. It all went into a folder. And one single line on our anniversary, gave me the green light. "He'll show you what 18 years couldn't." She wasn't just comparing me to someone else. She was erasing me. So I decided to return the favor. Not with rage. With record-keeping. With systems. And by the time the doorbell rang, I wasn't sitting there heartbroken. I was ready. The doorbell didn't just ring. It punched through the silence like a starter pistol. She nearly dropped her phone lunging for it. No hesitation. No subtlety. She didn't even glance at me as she pulled open the door like a teenager sneaking out after curfew. And there he was. Mid-30s, maybe. Gym body under a lazy button-up. Hair too perfect to be accidental. The type of guy who calls women babe before learning their names. His shoes still had the sticker on the sole, which told me everything I needed to know. He dressed for the entrance, not the exit. She bit her lip when she saw him, like she was trying to hold in a squeal. He leaned in, hand on the doorframe, sizing up the space like he'd just inherited it. I stayed seated. Same chair, same glass, same cold pasta. I didn't even turn fully. Just looked at them through the reflection in the kitchen window. "You sure about this?" I asked, voice low. She turned, lips parted, eyes flickering. Not with doubt, just calculation. Measuring how much she could get away with. Then she leaned in, kissed him. Right there. In the foyer. In full view. On our anniversary. She broke the kiss, wiped her mouth like she'd just finished a dare, and turned to me. You're dismissed. Dismissed. Like I was a butler she'd outgrown. Like 18 years of sacrifices and staying power and cleaning her mother's vomit off the carpet during chemo meant nothing. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I stood. Slow. Silent. No rage. Picked up my phone from the table. Swiped once. The hallway light dimmed automatically. Just a flicker. Like the house was holding its breath. Then I walked into the study. Closed the door behind me. And locked it. He laughed. I heard it through the wall. You didn't tell me he was such a loser, he said. Trust me, she purred. He's harmless. They didn't know that closing that door was the first switch flipped. That everything after that moment had already been pre-written, dry run, and stored with offsite redundancy. I slid the key into the drawer, opened the terminal, punched in a 5-digit sequence she'd forgotten even existed. Back when we installed the security system, I told her we needed fail-safes for travel. She called it overkill. I called it insurance. Now it was neither. Now it was active. The first text went out silently to a backup device in the garage. Then another to the server rack. The house's guest Wi-Fi. Gone. Her access credentials? Flagged. The motion sensors by the front door? Armed. One by one, everything began transitioning from shared home to controlled facility. Outside the study door, they laughed again. She said something about finally being free. And I smiled, because freedom always comes with a cost. And she hadn't read the fine print. I pressed one more button. Just one. A soft beep confirmed that the house's smart lock had rekeyed itself. The bolt slid in with a mechanical hum. I could picture him reaching for the handle in 10 minutes, after he was done showing her what 18 years couldn't, and realizing something strange. That door wouldn't open. The outside world was no longer available to them. Not without my permission. And they hadn't even begun to understand what that meant. First, they didn't notice. He was too busy making himself comfortable, loosening his belt, cracking open one of my imported beers from the fridge like he owned the place. She laughed too loud, voice a little too high, echoing in the kitchen like a woman trying to convince herself this wasn't reckless, that this was freedom, that this was sexy. They didn't see the lights dim at first. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet shift in tone. Like the house was holding its breath. Then the music stopped. Her phone blinked out of Wi-Fi. Notifications gone. Streaming paused. The kitchen speaker clicked softly, then fell silent. He went to open the front door again, probably to get something from his car. I heard the rattle from inside the study. Click, click, nothing. He jiggled it. Harder this time. Hey, he called. Did you lock this? What? She asked, still giggling as she came around the corner. No, why would? Then she stopped. He yanked on the knob again. Still nothing. I swear this was unlocked, he said, voice rising. That's impossible, she muttered. It's a smart lock. Exactly. The lights in the hallway shifted again, dropping to a cool, faint blue. Emergency mode. Not the default. Not something she'd ever activated before. Something buried deep in the system. Something I programmed. She looked up toward the ceiling like she expected to see the answer in the drywall. That's when the house spoke. Not me. The house. As per Clause 7 of the co-ownership agreement, a calm, digitized voice echoed from the living room speakers. Unauthorized romantic guests shall forfeit residential privileges. Effective now. Silence. The man's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her wine glass tilted slightly in her hand, then fell, shattering across the hardwood. She screamed. A sharp, primal sound, nothing elegant about it. No performance, no flirtation. Just raw animal panic. What the hell does that mean? He shouted. She sprinted toward the study door, pounded her fists on it. Open this door right now. What is this? What are you doing? But the door stayed closed. I didn't respond, because that moment wasn't meant for dialogue. It was meant for digestion. Let them chew on it. Let them taste the bitterness of losing control in a place they thought they owned. He grabbed his phone next. No signal. It's the Wi-Fi, she snapped. Just use cellular, try it. He held it up. No bars. They both froze. She walked to the back patio. Tried that door. Locked. He tried the garage. Dead. You're out of your mind, she hissed. This is illegal. This is kidnapping. But even she knew how empty that sounded. The cameras were recording. The logs were time-stamped. The contract she signed 2 years ago, during one of our therapy compromises, sat printed in triplicate, one copy already filed with the notary. Clause 7. Paragraph 3. My clause. I'd written it in after she insisted on flexibility in our agreement. Back then, she thought I was pathetic, that I gave in too easily. She never thought to read the footnotes. And now the house, our house, my house, was executing the agreement without emotion, without passion, just logic, cold and exact. She pounded on the study door again, voice raw. You're crazy. Inside, I calmly updated the access control. She was now listed as guest limited. He wasn't listed at all. I swear to God, I will call the police. On what phone? I murmured under my breath, sipping the now room temperature wine. Outside the door, he'd stopped yelling. I knew that tone. The silence of a man doing math. Risk versus reward. The sinking feeling that he was now part of a scenario way above his pay grade. I could almost hear it. The internal audit of every decision he'd made since stepping on my porch. He wasn't scared for her anymore. He was scared for himself. And the beautiful thing? The house didn't care. The walls weren't listening. He ran at the study door like a linebacker, shoulder first. It didn't budge. Reinforced oak. Magnetic lock. Useless effort from a man built for gym mirrors, not situations like this. She was screaming again, words with no structure, no strategy. Just sound. Open the damn door, she shouted, kicking it like the house might negotiate if she hit it hard enough. But the door didn't answer. That's when they noticed the silence. No footsteps upstairs. No creak of a chair. No sound of breathing from behind the locked door. She called my name once, then twice, then again, quieter each time. Still nothing. He stepped back, looked around, then ran toward the garage. The panel next to the door was blinking red. Vehicle slot empty. She followed, barefoot, mascara already dragging streaks down her cheek. The garage was cold. Echoed. Hollow. No, 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 she whispered, gripping the frame of the door like it might steady her. Gone. The car was gone. I was gone. The cameras? All offline. Disabled the moment I pulled out of the driveway. Not erased, archived, but no longer live. Nothing left to spy on. No audience for their panic. No one to appeal to. They ran back into the kitchen, and that's when she saw it. The folder. Thick, white, resting precisely in the center of the dining table. Same table I set for 2 just hours earlier. It was labeled in clear black print. Voluntary separation, pre-signed. She picked it up like it might bite. Inside, a stack of documents, tabbed and collated, each section highlighted. Financial disclosures, property title transfers, asset distribution, trust account reallocations. All notarized. There was a sticky note on the first page, written in my handwriting. Initiated upon breach. Trigger condition. In residence infidelity, observed or recorded. Clause 7 validated. Enforcement date. Tonight. She flipped to the signature page. My name. Her name. The notary seal. Dated 2 years ago. Her hands started shaking. Not dramatically. Just enough to make the pages flutter. He took the file from her and flipped through it. Faster. Eyes scanning. Jesus, he muttered. What? She barked. He looked up at her, pale now. No more smugness. No more performance. He's not coming back. She blinked. What do you mean? He held up the signed release of claim. This is airtight. You just gave up everything. No, I didn't. You signed it. You signed all of it. He gave you what you wanted and walked away. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. He kept flipping. Saw the annex. The clause that voided spousal support in the event of adultery within the residence. The clause that reverted shared assets to individual holding. The clause that made any attempt at legal challenge trigger immediate public release of stored footage. He swallowed. She's screwed, he whispered. Louder this time. You're screwed. Her knees gave out slightly and she gripped the back of the chair. The one I'd been sitting in hours ago, where I'd watched her kiss another man in our hallway. The pasta still sat on the plate, untouched, cold, a little dried out now. The photograph from Cinque Terre had slid off the table onto the floor. She didn't pick it up. He He sat down slowly, reading now. Really reading. Page by page. Mouth set in a grim line, like he was processing not just the document but the full weight of what he'd walked into. He planned this, he said quietly. All of it. She didn't respond. He looked at her, then at the walls, the ceiling, the smart lights now stuck in low-power mode. Your husband didn't just leave. He evacuated. And that was the first time all night she stopped shouting. Not because she calmed down, but because she finally started listening. And the house was still silent. Still indifferent. Just like me. She didn't sleep. Or if she did, it was in 30-second jolts between pacing and whisper fighting with a man who no longer looked like a reward, but a co-defendant. By sunrise, the both of them sat in separate corners of the kitchen. He on a stool, elbows on knees, hands on his head. She cross-legged on the tile floor, phone in hand, redialing over and over. Her lawyer's number? Straight to voicemail. At 7:42 a.m., she finally got through to the receptionist, who hesitated for a beat too long before saying, we've received a change of representation notice. You're no longer listed as a client. Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked at the screen like it had cursed at her. What change? She snapped. I didn't sign anything. The receptionist apologized. I just know we got a formal revocation on your file, and the signature matches the original onboarding. You might want to contact legal onboarding for a copy. She hung up. That was the first time she started muttering to herself. He watched her from the stool. What does that mean? It means someone revoked my legal backing using a pre-cleared power of attorney I forgot existed. She hissed, pulling up her inbox. Then her phone buzzed. Access denied. Corporate email account suspended. What the? She tapped again. Tried the employee portal. Access denied. She ran to her laptop. Opened it. Hit the VPN. Error. Clicked her Chrome profile. Blank. Like her work identity had been wiped overnight. He stood up slowly. You said you started that company with him, right? She didn't answer. He stepped closer. So he has equity. Had? She said too fast. We split it years ago. She was lying. He could see it. Because 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed again. From corporate board admin. Subject. Shareholder transfer confirmation. Final. Per your former spouse's notice of asset conversion, 16.5% equity has been returned to board discretion under Clause 12. B. Hostile domestic entanglement provision. Below that, a brief, cold sentence that changed everything. A compliance review has been initiated. You are hereby suspended, effective immediately, pending investigation. She stared at the screen like it had slapped her. He stepped back. Jesus. She stood there, frozen. That's when his own phone buzzed. He didn't want to look, but he did. Subject. Conflict of interest alert. Immediate attention required. He opened it. The email was from his own HR department. We have received internal notice that your personal relationship with an executive at a partnered company was conducted using devices belonging to that entity. This constitutes a potential breach of non-fraternization policy under Clause 4.7. Pending review, you are placed under provisional restriction. He sat down hard. Are you kidding me? He muttered. She turned to him slowly. You used my work phone? He snapped back. You told me it was your old one. It was tied to my executive profile. Well, you never said that. You. They both stopped talking. Just looked at each other. The horror sinking. This wasn't about a jealous husband anymore. This was about systematic demolition. She opened another email. One from a contact at HR she'd known for years. The subject line read, You really should have been smarter than this. And below that, he cited Clause 12b in the shareholder exit. The board had no choice. You hosted a sexual partner inside a co-owned residence, on company time, using a company-linked device. There are screenshots. Internal surveillance from the day before. The speakers were logged into your admin account when the message played. This is now a full-blown ethics inquiry. She sat down. Hard. I can fix this, she said to no one. He laughed. Not because it was funny. Because there was nothing left to do but laugh. You still don't get it, he said, head in his hands. She looked at him, eyes bloodshot. He leaned forward. Whispered. He didn't just react. He engineered this. And outside, in the driveway she still thought was hers, the cameras that were offline hummed quietly to life again, recording nothing, just waiting for them to realize they were no longer the main characters. It started as a trickle. One comment under a neighborhood post about power outages. Anyone else here screaming from the house on Elm and 14th last night? Sounded like a damn horror movie. Then another. Pretty sure I saw someone locked outside pounding on the door. Black dress. Didn't look like the wife. Within an hour, screenshots surfaced. Blurry, pixelated, but unmistakable. A still from a Ring camera across the street. Her, kissing him in the doorway, backlit by the soft glow of the foyer. Then a second clip, this time grainy footage from a nearby motion-activated driveway cam. No audio, just frantic movement. The door not opening. Her yelling. Him slamming the frame with his shoulder. The kitchen lights flickering out. It hit the local gossip blog by noon. Trouble at the Taylor house? Late-night visitor triggers domestic lockout drama. The comments exploded. Is that Meredith Taylor? The accountant from Finley and Myers. She's married, right? Wait. Wasn't yesterday their anniversary? And the cherry on top. Someone from the PDA forwarded the video link to the neighborhood group chat. Her name was tagged. So was mine. That's when her phone lit up with the first call. Her mother. She didn't answer. It rang again. She let it go to voicemail. Then the text came through. What have you done? Please tell me this is fake. Please. The next text wasn't as gentle. Brother. You destroyed him. For that? She stared at the screen for a long time before slamming the phone face down on the counter. Across the room, her upgrade sat cross-legged on the floor, against the wall like a kid in detention. He hadn't said much since his company's HR flagged him. No more chest-out bravado. No more swagger. He looked up at her now, eyes hollow. You think it's a coincidence that video got out? She didn't answer. He knew, he said, voice cracking. He knew everything before tonight. She shook her head. No, that's not. This wasn't a reaction. It was rehearsed. He gestured vaguely toward the dining table. The folder. The voice through the speakers. The house shutting us in. That clause? Who the hell writes that into a co-ownership contract? She looked out the window like she might find salvation in the driveway. He continued. The footage that leaked? It wasn't hacked. It was curated. It's not even the worst angle, which means he's still holding the worst ones. She whispered. He wouldn't. He laughed, the sound flat and humorless. You kissed me on his porch, on your anniversary, while he was in the next room. And then you dismissed him like a servant. On video. With audio. Of course he would. She stared at him. You don't know him. He blinked. I know men. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. And he's not a man right now. He's a system. He's programmed. She backed away slowly, as if the room itself might turn on her. The air felt thinner now. Her heart was racing, but not from guilt. Guilt was hours ago. This was exposure. She picked up her phone again. Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, group chats. Her name was starting to appear in comments. Not just initials anymore. The internet was connecting dots. The video had been uploaded with the file name. Clause 7 violation footage _final 1OV. That wasn't random. That was surgical. She typed out a message to a colleague. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Across from her, he stood up, rubbed his face and said softly, We're not in the blast radius anymore. We're ground zero. She stared at the blank screen of her phone. Somewhere, not far from them, people were laughing. Somewhere, a group chat was exploding with gossip. Somewhere, the man she thought she'd reduced to background noise was calmly, methodically, removing her from every space she once occupied. And now, for the first time since the doorbell rang, she wasn't worried about what he'd do next. She was terrified of what he'd already done. He started pacing like a man on a time bomb. Tight circles around the island counter, fingers running through his hair until it stood up in patches. The arrogance had drained out of him sometime after the fourth missed call from his supervisor. What replaced it wasn't shame, it was dread. Real, clenching dread. The kind you feel in your gut when the math doesn't add up and the walls start closing in. I can talk to him, he muttered for the fifth time. Maybe if I explain it wasn't serious. Maybe if I show I didn't know. She cut him off. You think you can negotiate with him now? After everything? I didn't know what this was, he snapped, but his voice cracked halfway through. I thought he was just some dead-eyed suburban husband. You told me he was weak. You kissed me in front of him. she shot back. You played into it. Because you said he wouldn't fight back. They both went silent. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. A sprinkler kicked on. The normal world continued while they're shriveled. His phone buzzed again. He didn't want to check it. But he did. Slowly. Email. He tapped it open, jaw tightening. He read the first line. Then the second. Then his entire face fell apart. She stepped toward him. What is it? He didn't respond. What? He turned the phone so she could see the screen. It was from his compliance department. Subject: Internal Review, Conduct Policy Breach. This is a preliminary notice regarding potential ethics violations stemming from conduct captured on public footage. A formal inquiry has been opened. Please avoid all client-facing activity pending review. There was a name at the bottom. Review initiated by Charlotte Lynn, Chief Compliance Officer. Appointed by Board Recommendation, 2021. Her eyes narrowed. Charlotte Lynn. He nodded numbly. She was brought in by an outside firm a few years ago. Some consultant named Davis. Said he vouched for her. Her stomach dropped. Davis was his middle name. He went by his first in public. Always had. But all his legal forms, consulting paperwork, the shareholder records, their postnup were signed David A. Taylor. She reached for the counter to steady herself. He sat down slowly, hands gripping the edge of the chair like the floor might fall out beneath him. She was his recommendation, he whispered. He's in my company. You don't work with him, she said, voice thin. No, he nodded. He doesn't work with anyone. He works around them. The last word hung there like a funeral bell. He opened another app. Messages. Threads. HR Slack channels. No replies. Then came the second email. Shorter. Colder. A secondary review has been initiated to assess misuse of partner devices during non-compliant conduct. You are advised to retain representation. His hand started to shake. I'm going to lose my clearance, he said softly. That alone could tank my contract. I just bought a house. My equity vesting date is next quarter. This could. He trailed off, eyes glazing. She sat across from him now. No longer the bold, dismissive wife in the black dress. Just a woman who realized she wasn't holding the strings anymore. And neither was he. He leaned forward, breathing shallow. He's not just smarter, he whispered. He's everywhere. And that finally broke him. Because he wasn't up against a jealous ex. He was inside the orbit of a man who didn't just prepare. He anticipated. Who didn't just react, he rehearsed. And worst of all, he waited. She watched the man who once swaggered through her front door curl inward like a shamed child. Not because he was caught, but because he now understood how little he ever mattered. He wasn't a threat. He was a tool. And the hand that wielded him had already moved on to the next play. The house felt unfamiliar now. Same furniture. Same scent. Same creaks in the floorboards. But nothing felt like hers anymore. It was like walking through a perfectly preserved crime scene. Nothing out of place, and yet everything wrong. He was gone. The lover, too. Left in a daze after realizing the full scope of the detonation. He didn't say goodbye, just gathered his things, eyes sunken, and walked out the back door like a man leaving a funeral that wasn't his. She was alone now, truly. The lights stayed dim. The system hadn't reset. His access codes had wiped hers out. Even her Spotify wouldn't connect. Every speaker she tried to wake with a command just blinked dumbly back at her. The house obeyed silence now. She drifted toward the kitchen on autopilot. The remnants of the last 72 hours still lingered: wine stains, untouched food, a shattered glass in the trash can. The white folder was gone. She didn't know when it had vanished, but it had. Like him. Then her eyes caught something in the pile of mail on the counter. A thick, cream envelope, slightly yellowed at the edges. Looked like it had been buried under magazines and bank statements for weeks. To Meredith Taylor. Subject: Anniversary addendum. For your review. No return address. Just his handwriting. Neat. Formal. Unemotional. She picked it up, throat tightening. Her fingers hesitated at the flap. She opened it. Inside, a single page. Law firm header. Bolded section titles. She scanned it, then reread it, then sat down hard, like the weight of the paper pulled her spine out from under her. Postnuptial clause, addendum C. If infidelity is initiated or hosted within the primary residence, the initiating party hereby forfeits without recourse, all claim to property held jointly or under marital title, spousal or partner support, financial or legal, reputation protection clauses including NDA, public relations coordination, or mutual narrative control. This clause may be enacted unilaterally upon violation, provided evidence is clear and date-stamped within the confines of the residence. At the bottom, 2 signatures. Hers, his, notarized, dated 2 years ago. She remembered that night now. They had been trying again. Marriage therapy, compromise, he said. Let's formalize things for clarity. She had skimmed the document, distracted by her phone, then signed it over dinner while half listening to a podcast. It was supposed to protect her, because at that time he had been the one she didn't trust. He'd been distant, unavailable, quiet. She assumed he had secrets. He did, but they weren't affairs. They were plans. She looked at the line again. Forfeits all claim to property, support, and reputation management. Reputation management. Her mind flashed back to the headline on the gossip blog. The group chat, the leaked video, the file name, Clause 7 violation footage _ final 1.mov. He'd named it like a closing statement. She tried to breathe, failed, stood up, sat down again. It wasn't that he punished her. It was that she gave him permission to. 2 years ago, with a pen she'd picked, with a signature she hadn't even glanced at, while she was half scrolling through an Instagram reel of some divorce influencer saying, "Never let a man dictate your terms." She had dictated them herself, in legal ink. And now, there were no appeals, no spin, no control of the narrative, no well-placed denial or strategic omission. She'd surrendered everything with that paper, and only just opened it now. The envelope trembled in her hand as she stared down at the legal equivalent of a death sentence. There was no screaming left, no tantrum, no one to call, just a quiet hallway, a flickering light, and the echo of a man who hadn't raised his voice once, because he didn't need to. She wrote her own execution order. All he did was file it. She chose a quiet spot, out of town, low profile, nothing too familiar. An old cafe they used to pass on long drives but never entered. It was neutral ground by accident, forgotten by both of them until now. She arrived 15 minutes early. No makeup, hair tied back, blouse wrinkled. No jewelry, not even her wedding band. Just trembling fingers wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea she hadn't touched. She didn't know if he would show. When the door chimed and he walked in, she nearly dropped the cup. He looked untouched, not angry, not triumphant, just finished. Pressed shirt, clean shave, calm eyes. He wasn't glowing with revenge. He wasn't wounded either. He was done, and that somehow was worse. He spotted her, walked over without a pause. No hesitation. No scan of the room like he expected trouble. Just a straight line from entrance to closure. She stood to greet him, tried to smile. Didn't make it halfway. "Hi," she whispered. He sat. She didn't know where to start. "You ruined everything," she finally said. Not with venom. With exhaustion. Like a woman crawling from wreckage only to find the fire was still spreading. He studied her. 1 breath. 2. "No," he said, voice steady. "You did." She opened her mouth, tried again. "You could have just." He raised a hand. Not rudely. Just enough to stop her before she said something useless. "You mistook quiet for weakness," he said, not as an insult but as a diagnosis. "You thought because I didn't fight I couldn't see. Because I didn't scream, I didn't know." She lowered her gaze. "I was lonely," she offered, barely audible. He didn't bite. "You made me feel invisible." Still nothing from him. Just that steady gaze. I didn't think." "Exactly," he said. Then he reached into his bag. She flinched slightly. Old instinct. Guilt anticipating punishment. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a small, black flash drive. He slid it across the table. Neat. Deliberate. "What's this?" "Everything you'll need," he said flatly. She didn't touch it. "What kind of?" "Security footage. Legal letters. Email chains. Resignation notices. Clauses. Signatures. Recordings." He leaned back in his chair. "Everything you'll be asked for when your board requests a formal statement." She stared at it like it was poison. I didn't think it would go that far." "It already has," he said. "You're just the last one catching up." A pause. Heavy. Her fingers twitched, then finally curled around the drive. It was light. lighter than it should have felt. I can't fix this, she murmured. I know. What do I do? You survive. Maybe. If you're careful. She blinked. And what do you want? He exhaled through his nose, almost amused. Nothing. That's the part that scares you. Isn't it? She nodded, slow and small. I want nothing from you, he said. No apology. No explanation. Not even closure. She looked up, eyes shining. I'm sorry. Then say it to your lawyer. Or your pastor. Or your friends. Not to me. Silence. He stood. She didn't. I meant it, you know, she said, choking a little. Once. A long time ago. I know, he said, then paused. That's why I waited so long before walking away. I had to be sure you weren't her anymore. She tried to say something, anything, but it collapsed in her throat. He glanced once at the tea she never drank, then turned and walked out the door. She sat there for another 10 minutes. No dramatic crying. No scene. Just the hum of a cheap ceiling fan and the sting of knowing the reckoning hadn't been a storm of rage. It had been a cold filing system. Logged. Signed. Delivered. The man she dismissed had never raised his voice. But now his silence was the loudest thing in her life. He had one hand on the cafe door, ready to step into the chilled dusk, when her voice cracked behind him. Small, desperate, raw. Did you ever love me? He didn't turn. Didn't need to. He just let the silence stretch long enough for it to hurt, then said without malice. Enough to let you destroy yourself without stopping you. And that was the worst kind of love. The kind that watched, silently, while the person you once cherished lit the match and smiled as the house burned, never realizing they were inside it. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her reflection in the window was smaller now. Slumped. Unmade. Not the woman who waltzed across thresholds in short dresses. Not the one who laughed in hallways and poured his wine like it was hers. Just a flickering ghost behind laminated glass. And then another shape entered the frame. The door chimed again as it opened behind him. He didn't have to turn around to know who it was. The man was thinner now. Hollowed out. Not physically, spiritually. Like the last 72 hours had scraped him down to bone and regret. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes bloodshot. The charm was gone. The shoulders slumped. He walked up slowly. Not with confidence. With reverence. Or maybe dread. Stopped beside him. Didn't speak for a moment. Then, please, the man whispered, not even looking him in the eye. Just make it stop. There was no context needed. No explanation. They both knew what it meant. The fallout. The emails. The slow bleed of reputation. The humiliation. The conversations he couldn't unhave. The footage he couldn't retract. The digital trail that would follow him into every job interview. Every board meeting. Every client dinner. The husband turned his head slightly. Just enough to glance at him. The other man's lip trembled. I didn't know, he muttered. The husband studied him. Not with hatred. Not with pity. Just the kind of cold, emotionless evaluation a man gives to a screwdriver after it's stripped the last screw. You'll both forget me, he said finally. The man blinked, confused. But you'll never forget what I did. Then he stepped out into the evening, letting the cafe door shut softly behind him. No dramatic wind gust. No thunder. Just the dull thud of the past sealing itself shut. He didn't look back. Not at the woman who mistook silence for insignificance. Not at the man who thought charm was immunity. He walked out into the night without a destination, because destination wasn't the point. He already arrived where he needed to be, gone. And in his place he left only systems. And consequences. And the kind of silence that never fades.